Earlier this month, Pirate Gold said it found another large advanced argillic target at its Cripple Brook target, 20 kilometer east of Moby Dick. 2024, the Moby Dick advanced an argillic alteration zone spanning 3,100 meters by 850 meters wide and to depths of 500 meters as defined by diamond drilling. So what are the overlaps between Moby Dick and Cripple Brook? And what is the potential scale? Denis Laviolette, he is CEO of Pirate Gold. Denis, welcome to Mining Stock Daily.
Thanks for having me back, Mike. Excited to talk to you about this today.
Well, let's get into it, Denis. In addition to the news release discussing what you're seeing at Cripple Brook, you have an you rather have an accompanying video on your YouTube channel discussing the field work, and your VP Exploration, Greg Matheson, says in the video, we're uncovering a District 1 rock at a time.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, it's been actually pretty good. Clipper Brook is a very, very exciting area. And I don't know if you recall, back when we originally found Moby Dick, or in the lead up to finding Moby Dick, we had done this extensive data compilation over the region. And we had found this whole kind of historic report from a BHP geologist back in the 70s that was reviewing some Asarco work. And he noted, several hundred meters of advanced argillic alteration and noted copper and gold mineralization. Again, at the time, the concentrations weren't really exciting for them in the 70s. But again, like gold prices, copper prices weren't where they were today. So obviously, this all provokes another look. And we already knew that Clipper Brook had the chance to be. And when we had all this geophysics work that we did over it, we ended up seeing an anomaly very similar to that over Moby Dick. This is about 12 kilometers to the east of Moby Dick. And it's about a 10-kilometer long anomaly that shares a lot of similarities. And so really just, more field work over the area, outcrop assessment, etc. And last but not least, we got that, that gun, that spectral gun out and started zapping a lot of outcrop, zapping a lot of hand samples. And that's really been our secret weapon out there. And what that tells us is that we're actually getting the presence of alunite. And so what alunite is a clay mineral that forms in the upper part of these advanced argillic zones. And so you end up getting in the shallower sort of horizons that sort of lithocap environment, you end up getting the presence of alunite. So that's really reassuring because it tells us that our system hasn't been eroded away. A lot of people have kind of thought, well, this is great, you've hit this, ancient epithermal system, but what are the odds that it survived glaciation? And so the presence of alunite in situ over this whole thing tells us that the whole thing's preserved beneath us. And so we're really, really excited to get in there with the drill, and permits are in hand and everything's ready to go. So we're very, very excited about Clipper Brook. It's a humongous target. And of course, Moby Dick.
So refresh us again on the discovery of Moby Dick. What was the discovery and why was it significant?
Well, Moby Dick really was a discovery of it's a 3.1 kilometer by about 800 kilometer wide advanced argillic alteration zone that's prolifically mineralized with copper and gold. What makes it so exciting is that we ended up with sort of a core to it that yielded about 150 meters, if I'm not mistaken, 180 meters, 150 meters of 0.5 ish copper equivalent, and in basically 50-50 blend of copper and gold. And then we got within that about a 50-meter zone of 1.5% copper equivalent. Now, why is that so exciting? Well, we've got the footprint for a humongous target. So this is a humongous large tonnage zone. That in and of itself, in the current market of coppers and out there on the tray of brownies of copper projects worldwide, there's only 4 of them that are 4 to 5 projects, I think, in the world that are 1 billion tons plus. And so when you start to crunch out the dimensions of what Moby Dick could be, it could easily be one of those. And to have it have the grades that it has at 0.5%, that works today. That's what we're talking about in the comparative group. All of these companies are, north of $1 billion. And then to have, what makes these things special, what you need to make one of these things extra special is a payback zone. So when you have that 50 meters of 1.5% equivalent, that's a very robust, very high grade zone. And so, we followed up on Moby Dick. We've put lots more holes. We stepped out, hundreds of meters on both sides of our discovery there and started to fill in that 3.1 kilometer long system that we've got, Moby Dick itself. And we're starting to fill it in. And those holes are all pending assays. So we're really, really excited to start to see some assays back from that. I think we can expect assays as soon as possibly, even early September, on the first follow-up holes to our discoveries at Moby Dick. So, it can't come soon enough. It's been a tough summer, tough market. Obviously, we've got a tailwind now in the market. Copper's testing all new highs all the time. But we really need to revisit, like when we first discovered, for the listener, you got to remember, you're drilling hundreds of meters of altered rock. And it may seem logical that it's like you look at this visually and say, oh, well, there's sulfides and it's through all the rock and it looks interesting. But you never really know until you get assays. And when you're drilling 1,000-meter holes, like you're going right through from surface down, like, this is a mega zone. And you're not coming out of it. You can't stop the drill halfway through. So you got to keep going. You got to get through the whole thing. And beyond that, you've got to sample the whole thing. And so, again, on visuals alone, it's not like when you're dealing with high-grade gold, when you're really, really confident, you can just kind of keep drilling it, move on to the next hole, keep investing in that zone, because you already know that you're probably okay when it comes time to getting your assays back. But the lead time on these big copper holes, these big, humongous holes, is so long. So when we first drilled our discovery holes at Moby, we really wanted to wait and for our assays to come back, which took a couple of months before going back and revisiting the drilling and following up. Whereas if it was like a high-grade gold system, we would have followed up right away. We wouldn't have stopped because we would have been, we wouldn't have known exactly the number. Let's say we would have had at least a reasonable high confidence that those assays would hold up and, no sense in delaying things. And so unfortunately for the Moby Dick story, that it was an incredible discovery. We kind of dropped it in maybe the worst time possible in the market, to be honest, but that's okay. And then it was a gap until we could, our follow-up drilling, as we started to follow up as soon as we got our assays back and we knew that we had something, we knew we had to make a discovery. And so now finally, early September, we're hoping that chain of news, that steady state flow of news on Moby Dick will continue. And notwithstanding, going into Clipper Brook, just 12 kilometers away, we have another 10-kilometer Moby Dick lookalike. It's just really, really special. So this could be a multi-billion ton district. My lips to God's ears, I probably can't even say that legally, but I mean, that's my feeling on this, is that's it's got a humongous footprint, and it could easily, that footprint could easily have something like that, so long as the assays and, the mineralized zones hold up.
Can you talk about those linkages between Moby Dick and Cripple Brook? So Cripple Brook, again, the announcement that you made earlier this month was there was the EM data that came back, the electromagnetic data, the survey data that you've released. And then there is also the outcrop as well as subcrop that you're looking at as well, too. So what are the linkages that you can say right now before you actually have drills turning?
Well, the linkages are, we have altered monzonite. So we're in that Crippleback Intrusive Suite. So the same rocks. We have our altered monzonite. It's clay altered. So we have advanced argillic alteration. So marked by our kaolinite, montmorillonite, and now alunite. The montmorillonite and the pyrophyllite also present. We had that over at Moby Dick. And so those are classic high sulfidation epithermal minerals that you would get from really, really strong acidic environments. So you got to remember this. This rock has been basically chewed to ratchet from all of this acid, and you've got vuggy silica and all those other sorts of things, and you've got the presence of chalcopyrite, and pyrite throughout the rock. It's very sulfide rich. And then beyond that, so those are, again, those two things exist on both sides. We're also getting minerals like boronite, which is a really, really high tenure copper sulfide or sulfosalt. And that's extremely encouraging. One of the things that really jumped off the page as we got into a higher grade material over at Moby Dick was the magnetite. We obviously we're at surface right now over at Clipper Brook and with limited outcrop. And so it's hard to ascertain if we're going to have that. But the drilling will tell that story. But right now, so many of the boxes are checked. That's just in the rocks and the alteration and the mineral assemblages. When it comes to the geophysics, what really jumped out over at Moby Dick was that we had this resistivity low. And I kind of hate using that because what it basically means is you have conductive rocks. So when you have a resistivity low, you have a conductive high, right? And so what Moby Dick was this sort of outlier of conductivity as well as magnetics. So it was also a magnetic outlier. And it's the same in Clipper Brook. So we have the same blend of low resistivity and magnetic destruction over there at that project. And so those two features are overlapping. So we have this very similar geophysical signatures, and then the chemical analogs, etc., and geological analogs are there. So really, it's just going to be a matter of what's the grade and what depth of profile are we in? Are we in that sort of shallow? Do we need to go deeper before we start getting into the really juicy stuff? Or is it going to be right there for us right when we drill, like it was at Moby Dick? And so, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Denny. My fault.
Nope, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, so Denny, next steps then. You have when are you going to be potentially drilling this, and how are you prioritizing the other targets that you have at Pirate Gold?
Well, Moosehead results, I believe, are around the corner. So we haven't forgotten about Moosehead. So we're hoping to get something out on some Moosehead results out shortly. But right now the priority is we're following up on Moby Dick, and we're really chomping at the bit to get into Clipper Brook. Right now we're in that pad making access. We're opening up that Clipper Brook area to get in there with the rigs, and so hopefully we can start getting in there as soon as the end of August / within the next couple of weeks. Let's say next week, it's a couple of weeks. We should hopefully be breaking ground and drilling over there at Clipper. And the other thing is that barge. I know we talked about that in the past couple of conversations. So at long last, the pirates are setting sail on Crippleback Lake, and then we can start to sink a couple of holes down into Moby Dick right from above, which is awesome. So we really, really need to do that to bring all of this mineralization up closer to surface. And so that's really, really exciting. Really looking forward to that campaign starting. So that's going to be starting effectively this week into next week, getting that guy going. We hope so. At least that's what I heard last time. But as these things are, you have always these logistical hiccups and things. Thread the needle on getting everything deployed at exactly the right time. But yeah, as far as I know, everything's on schedule, and we should be able to start punching some holes in from the top of Crippleback Lake. But we haven't stopped. We've been, we've got drills, a couple of rigs fencing off Moby Dick as we speak.
Just remind us as well, it's late August. Right now, you have a winter drilling season in Newfoundland?
Of course, yeah, we do. And so we're going to be going right through the winter.
Denny, can you value, the work, what you're targeting right now, given where it is situated right now? You do mention that there's existing mines that are nearby where you are. You are in central Newfoundland. You are in Canada. Can you talk about how much that changes the value of what you're discovering there, say, somewhere else, somewhere that's remote?
Yeah, no, for sure. So it's immensely important. We have power, we have access road. We are 30 kilometers from Newfoundland's largest, newest mine, which is Valentine Lake, roughly as the crow flies to our Crippleback package. And then of course we've got Moosehead, which is just off the highway. That's much more advanced. It's a high grade orogenic gold veining system. So it's a lot of narrow vein, high grade stuff, but it's right off the side of the highway, about 30 or 40, about 40 kilometers from Newfound Gold's discovery, as well as it's on the same road. It's along the same route that Newfound Gold will be trucking their ore to have it processed out in the Baie Verte Peninsula at Pine Cove. And so we're sort of halfway along that journey, if that makes any sense. And so, Moosehead's just a little satellite deposit along the side of the road, with it shares almost all the same fingerprints as what you've got over at Newfound Gold. And then, of course, for Equinox and such, this is like, very close to that infrastructure, and it's easily accessible. Newfoundland is pretty straightforward from a permitting perspective. It's very pro-business. It's a very small island. It's easy, there's not a ton of population, but the population there wants to work. They're very pro-mining. Both sides of the political aisle in Newfoundland are. And, it's been a dream of a place to get things done. There's a lot of, oftentimes, and I want to say this sensitively because a lot of other jurisdictions have to juggle the First Nations question. And I can't really comment on that. I think obviously the First Nations situation is quite complicated in Canada. But, to acknowledge it as a hurdle for a lot of projects to get over the line with, like they have to get their provincial permits, their federal permits, they have to get sign off. And, obviously we're all well aware of what's going on in Richmond, BC, and with the real estate stuff. So it's not just, limited to mining. It's also affecting pipelines, a lot of things. And so Canada's got a big problem. We got to figure out how we can meet in the middle with the First Nations group so that everybody's treated fairly and everybody's, feels like they're represented properly. And I'm just not sure the framework that we have right now does that. But one of the things I can say, at least as pertains to Newfoundland, the island, and not Labrador, but Newfoundland proper. And Newfoundland proper doesn't have that problem. There are no First Nations bands that are recognized on the in that area or on the island in general. So it's not no actual ceded kind of territory, if that makes any sense. And so it's a consequence of some horrific truths of the past, I think, with the First Nations peoples being displaced from the island centuries ago. But nonetheless, it's not a hurdle that companies operating in Newfoundland have to cross, which can make the permitting process quite a bit quicker.
Now, Denis, stepping back, what trends are you going to keep an eye on for the remainder of the year, especially for resource investors? We've seen really a terrific bounce back, copper and gold at the end of the summer. We're seeing some real worries about oil prices. Look, we've been really on an uptrend. There's been a lot of money that has kind of flowed into the sector, and you can bet there's just going to be an avalanche of news that's going to be coming out into this fall.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like this, Mike. I think copper's testing all new time highs. I think everybody is now, mining's on everybody's lips, which is for the first time in well over a decade. I'm not sure about you, but for the first time in well over a decade, at least for me, it doesn't matter what channel you're on, what social media platform you're on. It's a talking point in the world. So generalists are starting to gain awareness of this. I think the other thing is they're also aware of the threat AI poses to the software space, so the SaaS business. So this is something that I'm watching, is that, people are going to have to come to terms with QuickBooks being worthless, with Microsoft Excel being worthless, with Microsoft being worthless, with most of these software as a service businesses being absolutely worthless, because, even with the newest version of ChatGPT, or I think it was Fable, came out, which was Anthropic's, the government had to step in and squash it, because basically you could be like, you don't need any of these softwares that you pay for. These AI platforms are able to basically build you whatever you want. You could build a video game in 2 seconds with just you and me prompting it without any computer background at all. And so we have to come to terms with this whole economy of, when you look at the S&P, when you look at the broader market and you say, okay, what fraction of companies are in this kind of tech world are relying on software as a service? And what does it mean when software as a service becomes completely obsolete, comes zero? So that's going to send shockwaves through the digital market. And I think people are going to be clamoring for real things. The other thing that I'm paying close attention to is what's happening in the United States, the bond market, and Japan. So what we're seeing now is, we're seeing the just last week, I think it was, the US went out there and is trying to fire the bazookas and Gatling guns at trying to keep of US dollars at trying to float the yen. And, that carry trade's been a thing. And they got to keep this yen from crashing. And so the cracks are all in the foundation. As far as oil goes, the Strait of Hormuz, I couldn't quite place why exactly was there this inverse relationship. Like, normally war equals strong gold prices because it's a fear thing, right? So it's instability in the world, and you go, okay, so war and conflict should equal higher gold prices. Why was it that Iran, when that was announced, why did that automatically, and every time there was a peace deal announced, every time there was like the strait was opening up, then gold would surge? And then as soon as rockets get fired back and forth, and missiles and drones and all this shit, and the rhetoric started to gain, to get a little more toothy, a little more scary, then suddenly gold prices would collapse again, and everybody's going, and it was because of this whole oil situation you're talking about. And I think that now with, peace talks on the horizon, a deal looking in the mix, that's why we're seeing a lot of this this resurgence in the gold. It's clear everybody wants to buy gold, but that's always going to be a thing. What is oil worth per barrel in ounces of gold? It's still relatively cheap. Like, it's extremely cheap, actually. So gold is, $4,000 an ounce, and oil still flirts with, $80-90 a barrel. And so is that, in terms of if gold is your currency and that's what you're buying oil with, it's never been cheaper. So there's got to be an equilibrium hit there. So there's a lot to watch. My thesis is hold strong, keep doing what I'm doing. Pirate gold, let's keep discovering. As far as my investment portfolio is, I'm investing, I'm, rebalancing the portfolio a little bit here and there, but by and large, I'm kind of sitting on it. I'm happy with my bets. I'm happy with the ponies I've chosen, and I'm waiting to be right.
Denis Laviolette, thanks for speaking with Mining.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
The information presented should not be considered investment advice. Mining Stock Daily and its affiliates are not responsible for any loss arising from any investment decision in connection with the material presented herein. Please do your own research or speak with a licensed financial representative before making any investment decisions.